So this is the second part of our O2R lesson for today. And I want to start off by something that's really important, not just for, whoops, wait, let me get this, there we go. I want to start off by something that's like not just important for the O2R, but just important in general, especially when you're doing music stuff, and especially when you're working with technology. And that's think, look, execute. There's a lot of times when you're going to be doing troubleshooting. And troubleshooting means that basically you have to stop and take a step back and usually chill out before you can think clearly about what might be the problem. And this is something that some people can do really well. Other people have a really hard time about just like chilling out. So think, look, execute. Think, what do you want to do? What is it you're trying to accomplish? Look and see what the state of things are. See what's going on, and then execute, do it. So for example, I want to cross the street. When I come to a street corner and I think, I want to cross the street, I don't just start jumping across the street because I could get hit by a car. So what I do is I think I want to cross the street. I look both ways. I think, okay, the coast is clear. No cars, no bikes, no skateboarders. I can go, and then I execute. I cross the street, right? Think, look, execute. Think, what do you want to do? Look, okay, it's safe to do it. Execute, let's do it. As a producer in a studio, you have to do this all the time. You have to constantly be thinking, looking, and then executing. Don't just think and then execute, because if you do that, you're going to run into problems. So if I think I want to cross the street and then I just start crossing the street, I could get hit by a car. It happens all the time. Well, in the O2R, the consequences aren't quite as dire, but we can get ourselves into trouble a lot by just kind of thinking, I want to do this, and then not looking at what the state of things are and just kind of going ahead and doing it. So for example, think, I want to adjust the level of the vocal on the input path. Look, I look at what the fader mode is selected over here, because my input path, remember, is is layer 1 through 24. So I think I want to adjust the level on my vocal. So I look over here, layer 1 through 24 is selected, great. And then I can go ahead and adjust the level on my vocal input, which would be probably number 1 here. So that's how we would go about doing that here. If I want to adjust my EQ on a track, let's say I want to adjust the EQ on my vocal, but it's been recorded already, so it's the vocal on the monitor path. Well, then I would make sure my layer 25 through 48 is selected, because 25 through 48 is my monitor path. Then I have to go over here and select the button for my vocal, because I want to adjust the level of the EQ on it, and the EQ is in the selected channel section. So I go ahead and I push the select button, and then I go over here and I adjust my EQ. It's not that many steps, it's only 2 steps. I hit the layer button, I hit the select button, and I make adjustments. It's not that hard, but it means that there's things you have to do. If I'm in Pro Tools and I have a vocal here on channel 1, if I want to adjust an EQ on it, well, I have to first of all put an EQ on there, and I have to go in here and adjust it. But what if I have 2 EQs? What if I have an EQ here and an EQ here? Well, now my EQ here looks exactly the same if I click on it. See, it's the same, but I've just got different settings here. I have to know which one I'm looking at. So where do I look on here? I look right here, or I can look up here to see which one is actually highlighted. Whichever one is highlighted is which one I'm working with. And I can also look right here where it says the track name. Now, if I wanted both of these to be usable, or I wanted to edit both of these, I hold down Shift and I click the button for it. And that lets me edit the EQ for both of these channels here. Okay. So that's how we select that. But if I wanted to see which one I'm actually editing, I have to look right here, right? So it's not that the O2R is a whole bunch more extra steps. It's just they're different steps and you're not used to them yet. So you have to make sure that you are following the right procedures. And I have a whole list of procedures in the notes that we're going to be talking about a little bit later on. One more thing that's really important about all this is that you got to breathe. It's so important. Just chill for a minute and then just be like, all right, now I'm ready. And it's again, this is not just O2R stuff, this is everything. So breathe. Where to look on the O2R. Here's some common places where people get confused about on the O2R. The layer select buttons. A lot of times people will come in and they'll just start turning stuff up and they'll be like on the wrong layer, or the fader mode. They'll come in here and they'll say, okay, I'm on the right layer. So they'll start turning stuff up, but they're not hearing anything because their fader mode is set for aux and not fader. So that's really important there. The fader mode is not selected to the right thing. Also the encoder mode, if they're adjusting the encoders and they think they're adjusting their panning or whatever, but they're not because it's set for aux, you got to make sure about that. And then the aux select button. Which aux channel are we selecting? What usually for reverb and stuff is number 1 or 2, but if it's for your sends for your headphone mix, it's going to be 7 or 8. Okay, so those are some common places where things get weird, and I really hope that you can remember that and come back to this page whenever you're having some troubles in the O2R room, because this right here, this little part right here is like, I would say like 90% of your problems solved right there if you're having troubles with the O2R. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the back panel section here. So we have here, this is what the back of the O2R looks like. This is not something you're ever going to see. The reason why we're talking about it is because I want you just to see, it gives you help to understand what goes on with the O2R. And so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time with it. We're just going to do it really quickly here. You can come back and you can spend some more time with it if you want. Just remember the O2R has several different digital connectors on it. It's got a few different connectors on it in general. You've got XLR, you've got 1/4 inch, you've got RCA, and then we have these digital connectors here, ADAT, AES EBU, and SPDIF. And it's got all these connectors on the back of it. They really went crazy with their connectors on the back of this thing. So let's go over here to start with number 1. Right here, this is our master section here, and we have our studio monitor outs, that's 1/4 inch, and then we have our stereo out, which is XLR, and this is what's going to our multi-track tape machine. And you have over here our 2-track analog in, number 1 and 2, and that has number 1 is 1/4 inch, number 2 is RCA, and also here in our stereo output we also have an RCA output as well. That's for if you want to connect it up to some consumer equipment. I'm not sure why they have this in here like this, maybe because of ADAT or something like that. I mean, not ADAT, but like digital audio tapes. But honestly, I don't know why they have RCA on the back of this thing. This thing's expensive, and it's really unlikely that people are using RCA with this, but there it is. Control room out is it's a 1/4 inch right here as well. So 1/4 inch for your studio monitor out and 1/4 inch for your control room monitor out as well. Number 2 and 3 kind of go together. Number 3 is number 2 and 3 are your inputs, and it's just labeled like this because it's going in like a clockwise order. But number 2 is your 1/4 inch only inputs, 17 through 24. And number 3 is your 1 through 16. 1 through 16 is, remember, XLR or 1/4 inch. So you've got here your XLR input on the top and your 1/4 inch input on the bottom. Remember, if you plug into the 1/4 inch, it's going to override the XLR plug. So if you want to be using your XLR, do not have a 1/4 inch cable plugged into the back. Down here is our insert IO. The insert IO is one connector, and that's it's going to be a tip ring sleeve where the tip and the ring split the signal to input and output. It's a pretty common way to do things, and that's how the Mackie does it as well, the Mackie 1604. A lot of like prosumer gear will do it like that. Number 4 here is our slots. We already talked about the slots a little bit. You don't really have to know much about them except for just what's plugged into the slot on the back of your O2R. And number 5 here is our Omni out section. Just real quick here, number 5 is like just general stuff. Number A is letter A is the Omni outs. That's for your aux sends, or if you're using surround sound or something like that, it can be out of here as well. That's kind of a general thing that you can use for different purposes. Number B is the control here. Number C is your word clock. That's to synchronize digital things. Number D is your cascade in or cascade out. That's so you can connect multiple O2Rs, multiple O2Rs together. You can connect up to 4 of these. So you can have a total of 128 channels to, if you need to add more of these together, which would be a really giant mixing situation. You've got your MIDI in, out, and through. That's for like MIDI time code and stuff like that. You've got a meter. That's for connecting the meter bridge up top. You've got time code input, which is your quarter inch or MIDI or SMPTE. And SMPTE would be for like time code. Yeah, you can connect them up together. So if you had like 2 of them, you can connect them up and like use them as one big unit. And you got a host thing here, USB and serial. So you can connect up to your host, your computer. And then here's your digital inputs and outputs. And this is, each one of these is 3. So, and each one of these can be stereo, because on digital things, you have one cable that can carry left and right, which is a pretty cool thing when you're getting into digital stuff. All right, let's back that up like that. Cool. And all the stuff I just went over was all this stuff right here. And that's all that. That's the end of these notes here. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back over to these ones. We're going to start at the beginning and just kind of go through this. Again, a little bit on the quick side, because I don't really want to get too bogged down with stuff until you've actually gone in and been able to put your hands on it. So some of this stuff we're going to skip over pretty quickly. Other stuff we're going to spend a little bit more time on. But this is just an overview of it. We're going to leave this window open here just for later. Let me just put that out like that. We'll go in like that much. Okay, cool. All right, and I'll move it so it's, there we go, like that. There you go, cool. So I can flip back and forth. Okay, so up top is our meter bridge section. You can see it's got the 3 layers on here, layer 1 through 24, 25 through 48, and in your master layer. That's just showing us what we're actually looking at here. Now, you have over here 3 parts here. There are 3 input metering positions. The metering positions are for only input channels. So here you have pre-EQ, pre-fader, and post-fader. It's a little bit hard to read because of the font placement, but it says pre-EQ, pre-fader, and post-fader here. Pre-EQ, pre-fader, and post-fader. What this means is pre-EQ is before your EQ, before your plugins. Pre-fader is after the plugins, and post-fader is after the fader. As I said in the notes, when you're recording stuff, you want it to be, you want it to say pre-fader so you can check and see if you're clipping. If you are mixing stuff, you want it to say post-fader so you can see if you're clipping on your mix. And there's also a peak hold button. In the peak hold button, you can push that in to make sure that you're actually holding the peaks. Let me see here. Keep in mind 0 dB equals minus 16 dB FS, and then the over LED represents digital clipping or distortion. So this over here, so 0 is actually before we get to clipping, and then over means you're actually clipping. So you want to be careful. You don't want to hit the red in this one at all. Like, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but in Pro Tools, if you hit that red, you're not actually audibly clipping because the red is like a little bit below actual clipping. So you can still potentially have things in red without hearing any audible clipping. Ableton Live, however, is not like that. Ableton Live, the red is clipping. The Yamaha O2R is the same as Ableton Live. The red is clipping. And really, the reason why I'm bringing this up like this, and the reason why I brought up Ableton Live is because you really have to know your software. You have to know your hardware and know, okay, if it hits the red, is it actually clipping, or is it just they're warning you that it's about to clip? And sometimes it's a case of one or the other. In this case here, it is actually clipping. Now, we also have, here's our stereo master level, and you definitely don't want that to clip. And then over here, we have our buses 1 through 8 levels for those as well. We have our output metering position for the buses here. Usually it's going to be post fader, but if you want to see to make sure you're not clipping the input into your bus, then you can change it to pre-EQ. Over here is our display access window. We talked about that before. And on here, if you want to see your different metering, deeper into the metering, you can push the meter button in here. And in here, again, you can set up where you're metering from. But we can also see on the screen all the different channels and stuff. So if you want to see 1 through 24 of the channels, or you could actually have it set up so you can see all 48 channels at the same time. Not all 56 channels, because 56 are usually used for our effects returns. But we can see all our meter levels here. We can also see here input channel metering pages. We can also see gain reduction or comp reduction here. So you can see different things on the screen, not just your level. If we go over here to the master section, you can see here there's channel 1 through 24, 25 through 48, 49 through 56, and then 1 through 48 here. And if we go to the right, we can see here's our master section. We have our buses, we have our auxes, and this is really useful. The auxes are useful if you think you should be hearing an internal effect, but you're not. You can check your auxes to make sure it's actually sending correctly. And then we have here our stereo, just to make sure we're not peaking stuff. And you can also see a bigger version of the stereo, kind of a zoomed in version of stereo, to make sure like what you're really seeing. Again, this is all on the screen. The AD input section here, we have 16 analog mic pre-inputs, and each mic pre has 48 volts, and it also has a 26 dB pad. There are 24 line inputs. 24 line inputs, just going through here. And then we have our dedicated line inputs over here, 8 of those. The min and max gain ranges go from minus 16 dB to plus 60 dB, which is quite a bit. And then we also have our analog inserts here. There's 16 of those for your XLR channels, if you wanted to add in. Remember, in the Audient, we had the insert path for our reverb, not reverb, sorry, our compressors or EQs and stuff like that. You can do the same thing on your O2R. Cool. All right. This is an example of, or not an example, this is what the signal path looks like. And you can see here, here's input A and B. A is our XLR, B is the 1/4 inch, and then we have the insert, which is also 1/4 inch, and we can see what's going on with this. Now, the important thing to notice here is that the insert is before our AD conversion. AD stands for analog to digital conversion. So the signal path, if we're using an insert like a compressor or an EQ or something, that's all going to be analog. It hasn't changed to digital. And then it goes into digital here, and this is what goes into the board. And basically, like I said, now you're in computer land. Okay, and this is what it looks like here. Again, this is all correct, except for the only thing that's weird about this is instead of this, this has Sapphire because it's SAE, but we don't have a Sapphire in there anymore. It's the Pro Tools HD, but whatever. I'm not going to change this. So I'm not going to worry about it because it doesn't matter. This is our audio interface right here. So the way this works is we have our AD, XLR, or 1/4 inch input here, pad, gain. All this stuff is before we get to the AD conversion. So this is all analog. And then we get into the board. Channel 1 goes to slot 1, output number 1. It goes into our Sapphire, input number 1, goes into our computer, Logic, Pro Tools, whatever, fader channel 1, input, output number 1, number 1. Now, if we're coming out of number 1, it's going to go out of the Sapphire or out of the audio interface, back into the card slot number 1, into channel 25. Now, that's a lot to say. It's a lot to think about. I know I probably just made you go like, whoa, hold on a second. But I just want to point out the important part of this. The really important part of this is not what's happening over here or anything like that. The really important part is that we're going, input path is channel 1, but the monitor path is channel 25. When I go into the computer, it's going to come in from channel 1. Out can go channel 1 as well, or it might say channel 25, depending on how you want to set it up. But our channel, our layer, is going to be 25 through 48. Our channel is going to be 25. If we're coming into channel 1, our monitor path is going to be 25. If we come into channel 2, our monitor path is going to be 26. If we come into channel 3, our monitor path is going to be 27, and so on, and so on, and so on. Now, that's actually quite easy to see on the board. It's easier to see on the board than it is to think about in my brain, because everything is just layered out right here. And if I zoom in, we can see channel 1 says 25, channel 2 says 26, channel 3 says 27, 4 says 28, 5 says 29, 6 says 30, 7 says 31, 8 says 32, and so on, and so on, and so on, okay? So everything is labeled on the O2R how it works up based on our input path versus our monitor path. But I want you to get in the habit, and this is a hard habit to get into because it's really easy just to say, okay, we're working on a mix. We're not recording anything. We're just working on a mix, and we're looking at these numbers here, and we're saying, okay, turn up channel 11, and you just go and you turn up channel 11. Okay, turn up channel 5. Okay, you just go and you turn up channel 5. And you're not really using your layer select button so much, maybe because you're just mixing. So you're just on channel 25 through 48. But the important part is that you're not actually on channel 5. You're not actually on channel 11. If you're working with your monitor path, you're actually on channel 35 for channel 11, and number 5 would be 29. Now, Swift says, what about other mixing consoles? And the answer is case by case. You're gonna have to learn this for every mixing console. Every mixing console is different depending on if it's digital. Like digital consoles are kind of like this. That's why we teach with this one, because it's gonna help you just get used to concepts that happen with digital consoles. We have 3 consoles at SAE, well, 2 digital consoles really, 2, maybe 3 actually. I don't remember if we still have the Personas or not. But the Behringer X32 is basically the same as this one. It's just a smaller footprint. We have this one here, that's 2. We have the S6, but that's more of a controller and not so much a mixing console. That's really just controlling Pro Tools. Even though it is digital and it does similar things, it's really just controlling Pro Tools. So it's not a digital console as much as it is a digital controller. And then we might also still have the Personas, and I believe the Personas has all these capabilities as well. Okay, so that's our basic signal flow here. The main part you want to remember is just that channel 1 comes back to channel 25, and so on and so on. Okay, so then we have our selected channel section over here. This is what it looks like, nice and clean. And then if we talk about the routing, now remember, in order to get to any of this stuff, first of all, we have to make sure we push the channel select button for the proper channel, which means we have to be in the proper layer. We hit the channel select button, and that brings us over to here, to this stuff here. The routing section, each input channel can be routed to the bus outs, the stereo out, or its own direct out. 1 through 8 here are the buttons that route the currently selected input channel to the bus outs. The stereo button routes the currently selected input channel to the stereo out, and the direct button routes this current selected channel input channel to its own direct out. Okay, so the direct out is if I want to record into Pro Tools. So you're really going to only be using the direct out button if you are on the input path recording into Pro Tools. All right, if all these buttons are off, the signal is not being sent anywhere. So basically, this stereo button is the same as your mix button on the Audient. It's the same thing. They call it the mix button on the Audient. They call it the stereo button here on the O2R. It's the same thing. So if we want to route to our buses 1 through 8, like let's say we have drums and we want all our drums to go to bus 1 and 2. So we would hit buses 1 and 2 for each channel, but we also have to make sure the stereo button is off for that individual channel, because remember, we don't want to double monitor, right? So if we have stereo on and 1 and 2 on, we're double monitoring. It's going directly from the channel and it's going to the bus. So it's going to be a bit louder. All right, our routing display can show us what's happening for every single channel. So if you want to just get an overview for those channels really quick, you can do that there. And you can navigate using your arrows down here on the bottom right-hand corner. There's also some buttons up here up top, all stereo, all bus, all clear, so we can turn everything off, or we can have them all go to stereo. By default, the O2R is already set up for stereo. So remember, on the Audient, you have to come in, you have to push the mix button for channels that you want to listen to. But on the O2R, that's already done for you. So as soon as you start playing audio through the monitor path and you just turn the faders up, you should be hearing something. All right, there's some more buttons here. Basically, surround sound mode. We're not going to worry about surround sound mode. So every time you see surround mode in here, don't worry about it, because I mean, if you want to kind of look at it and kind of try to wrap your head around it, that's fine. But we don't actually have any surround sound set up for the O2R, so all this stuff is not really a thing. Our surround sound is in the S6 room. All right. Phase insert button. The phase button flips the phase on the track. The delay button is used to select the delay pages. Delay is not like it's not like an echo. The delay button is not an echo on here. It's like a little delay just to offset things a little bit, just to line things up to help with phasing and stuff like that. All right, if you want to, let's see, we're going to skip over the stuff. Using the inserts, these pages here, the insert page, just shows us where's our insert, where's our compressor, where's our EQ in the signal chain. Okay, we're gonna kind of go over this, skip over this stuff here. Next we have a pan knob here. The pan knob is right here, and it just pans whatever's on the selected channel. We can see what's going on with everything though, and this is really useful. If you hit that pan display button, now you can see what all your channels are doing. I highly recommend getting used to this and using this to check things out so you can see quickly what's happening. Now, the channels on here are always just going to be numbered 1 through 24, 1 for 25 through 48, whatever. You can't actually name them in the O2R, so it's a little bit not super awesome, but it's awesome enough. Now, there are 3 panning modes. When you have things grouped together, you'll notice on here there's a few hearts. There's a heart here, there's a heart here. This heart, basically these hearts mean that these 2 channels are grouped together as a pair. Remember, there's pair groupings and there's other groupings where you can group multiple things together, but we're going to just focus on the pairs. When you pair them together, and the way you do that is you hold down, I would hold, like let's say I want to pair 21 and 22 together, these 2 right here, 21 and 22. I would hold down 21 and I would press 22, a deliberate press, not like a quick boop type of press, but a deliberate press. You want to make sure you're holding down one and you press the second one. So in here, once I do that, they get a little heart. Yay, that means they are a pair. They're in love. That's so cute, right? So we have 1 and 2 are paired together here, and then we have different modes, and what this does is it kind of locks in how like the panning works for them. Individual mode means that they operate individually. Gang mode means that they gang together, so when I turn one to the right, the other one goes to the right as well. And then inverse gang means that when I turn one to the right, the other one will go to the left, and that's a really important thing to use. I would highly recommend this for stereo channels. If you are using stereo channels, put them in inverse gang mode. You only have to turn one the knob, only turn one of it, and it will position the other one automatically. Okay. Individual mode is whatever. I wouldn't really use individual mode too much. Gang mode, I don't ever use that one because that's like if you wanted to both be in the same place. I guess if you want to change a stereo signal into mono, you could use gang mode. And then inverse gang, set trip mode. And then inverse gang is the one that's the most useful for paired channels. All right, if you want to compress a channel, every channel has its own compressor and every channel has its own EQ. Every channel also has its own gate. So if you wanted to work with the compressor on every channel, what you do is you select your channel button and you use the area here. You've got to push the select button for the channel you want, so it means you got to be in the right layer, push the right select button, and you can go in here and you can push the display button to get in here. Now you also have to turn each channel on for the compressor or the EQ. The EQ is on by default, but the compressor and the gate are not on by default. You need to turn them on. Once you turn it on though, it automatically brings you to this page. In this page, you have a couple of tabs across the bottom. You can edit your gate or your compressor. And it shows all the different stuff here for things. But you can also, there's a library for each one. The library allows you to recall presets. So you can save your own presets, or you can recall new presets or something. Sorry, not new presets, but like already saved presets. And these are good starting points, especially in the beginning when you're still kind of getting used to how compressors and things like that sound. One thing I do want to point out here is that, zoom in a little bit, there are knobs for your controls here. So on the compressor, you have a threshold, ratio, attack, release, and gain for your knobs. So that's really nice. You're just hands-on. You can just move it like that. The gate has a threshold, range, attack, decay, and hold. And you can push this gate/comp button to flip back and forth between them. Whatever one's illuminated here, there's a little light here. Whichever one's lit up is which one you're controlling. Again, that's pretty self-explanatory. Once you're in the room and you push that button a couple times, it'll be like, oh, it bounces back and forth. That probably means that whatever one is lit up, that's what I'm controlling. If that's how you think about things, great. If not, I do not know what to tell you. All right. So here's our compressor. The current type indicates the current type of compressor selected for the channel. Here's our curve. There's how much, there's like your levels. You can see what's going on with it. Input, output. And then you have another, place to select the curve. There's some redundancy built into this stuff. And here's like a general overview. We already talked about this before. We talked about this stuff, but basically if you want to go through it again, there it is. Selecting the layers, we talked about this. On the input pad, that's input pod, that's all this stuff up here. Again, we talked about this, but there it is just close up with some things there for you. Okay, again, we talked about all this. All right, so our display section, there it is, close up, the effects, plugins. Again, I'm really not gonna get into this too much because it's redundant. We've already talked about this, but I recommend that you go through and look at this stuff when you're in the room with it. I highly recommend that you put this PowerPoint onto your iPad to take it into the room with you when you're in there. All right, if we want to send bus outs to the stereo out, we're going to talk about that actually not today because that's not something you need to worry about yet. I just want to get you working with a basic mix. So that's not something we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about this on Thursday. Setting the aux send mode. So when you want to set your aux send amount, you can do it with your fader or your rotary encoder. So what you can do is, number one, use the aux select display button to select the aux send pages. You can see how much your auxes are sending. You have pre and post buttons under each one. You can also do global pre and post down here. So you use the aux select buttons to select auxes 1 through 8, whichever aux you want to use. And then use the cursor buttons to select the fixed and variable buttons and press enter to select a mode. And then you have your parameters, level, pre-post, on, off, like that. Basically, you just want them to be set so you can use it right here. I would just say aux mode would be, I don't really know, because I don't use my encoders for the aux send amount. So I just use it in fixed mode, which I think makes it really slow. Okay, using the faders is how I use it here. So using the faders, fader mode, aux select, and then adjust your faders to set the levels. That's how I like to use it. Even though it shows up as little circles on the screen, I highly recommend using the faders. So if we're looking at this here, I go to fader mode. Like let's say I want to send a reverb. I want to send my vocal to a reverb. Well, what I'll do is I'll go to my vocal and it's on, let's say it's on channel 1. So that's gonna be actually channel 25 on the monitor path. Let's say I've already recorded it. So I go over here, I hit channel 25. I go here, number one, I'm going to push the select button. You don't need to push the select button for your reverb, but I like to get in the habit of pushing the button for what I'm controlling, just to make sure I keep my brain focused on stuff. Always get in the habit of pushing that select button. So I push the select button, and now I go here to fader mode, and I change the fader mode to aux. Now what's going to happen is once I hit that aux button, all the faders are going to go, they should go down if this is my first reverb I'm setting up. And now they're all the way down because all my faders, all my auxes should be not sending anything yet. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I select my proper aux send. So for a reverb in the beginning, just use effect number 1, which is auxes 1 and 2. So I can just use aux 1 as just an input here. So I make sure I select aux 1. I got my aux button select because they all went down, aux 1, and I push it up probably to 0, and that's my reverb send amount. Now if I wanted to set up my return so I can hear that reverb, because right now we're not getting the reverb back in. Remember, on the Audient, you need to have your stereo mix turned up and the mix button pressed. Well, same thing on the O2R. We have our inputs for our reverb, and our effects 1, 2, 3, and 4 are coming back into 49 through 56. 49, 51, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56. These 8 here are the input paths for our effects. 1 is channels 49 and 50. 2 is channels 51 and 52. 3 is channel 53 and 54. And 4 is channel 55 and 56. So now what I would do is I would hit my layer button, go to master, because that's where my channels 49 through 56 are. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to put it into fader mode because our aux send return is going to be the fader. We're going to turn up the level. And I turn it up, and then I should be hearing reverb. So I make sure it says fader, I turn it up, and then we should be hearing that reverb. Okay, this is something I just talked about a little bit ago, but just to go back over it again real quick. Pairing channels by using the select buttons. Okay, so if I've got 1 and 2 here, and you can see they're already kind of grouped into pairs here because you can't pair channels 1 and 3 or 1 and 7 or 1 and 20. You can only pair channel 1 and 2, channel 3 and 4, channel 5 and 6, channel 7 and 8. So you can go, what you do is you hold down the select button of the first channel and you push the select button of the second channel. So you hold it and you press it. Now what I've found personally is that you have to be a bit deliberate to make this work. So you hold it down and you give it a good press. Don't go like boop and done. That's not gonna help anything. It's not gonna properly select. All right, solo function. We want to make sure that we can solo safe some stuff here. So remember, solo safe has to be in mix down mode, not in recording mode, mix down mode. And solo safe, just like in Pro Tools, we want to solo safe our return channel. So you want to always have channel 49 through 56 right here be solo safed. They're not solo safed in this screenshot. We've got some up here that are solo safed. We don't want to solo safe generally those tracks up there. We generally want to solo safe our return channels. And I think that it should be a default setting on here, but it's not. All right. Again, we talked about this. Oh, the assign buttons. Well, actually, we didn't talk about this. The assign buttons are set up for auxes 7 and 8 on the O2R at SAE, and I recommend not changing it. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but that's my dog sniffling. It's really sad. All right, and then the Sapphire, you can ignore these last couple of pages here because it just talks about the liquid Sapphire, and there's really not a whole lot to talk about on the Pro Tools HD system that we have in the room there. And it's just an audio interface. It's not terribly interesting. If you have questions or if it's not working correctly, please speak with our tech guy, John. He knows a lot about it. I can help you a bit, but he's better to talk to. He's more of an expert at it, at that particular room than I am. All right. I think that's good.